Okay.
Driver's children's the most amazing care anywhere.
Association of Dorado County. This is October the 14th. And Stu will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
So I want to thank you for attending today. The president's comment is today is Indigenous Peoples Day and Columbus Day. This is national holidays. And so a lot of businesses most likely will be open. Federal buildings, not so. And we want to get right into our candidates forum. So I have a limited amount of things to say, which you all always appreciate.
That works.
But what we have here is the Dorado Irrigation District Division, not district, Division 3 candidates forum. We have Charles Mansfield here from Agriculture and Farming. And we would have liked, but I was not certain that we would have Bradley Popejoy, who's involved with water truck and trucking generally, and so he's running that business. It was at a conditional attendance confirmation so that I knew that he may not show, but we're gonna go anyway forward with what we got. Gina, go ahead and take it over.
Hi, welcome everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here today, those in the room and those on Zoom. This is the second forum from the Taxpayers Association of El Dorado County. This is, as you just heard, is for El Dorado Irrigation Division 3. I want to thank Chuck for being here today. It's going to be pretty straightforward. We have a set of questions we'll be asking. These questions came from both the Taxpayers Association and the public. You'll have 3 minutes to answer the questions, and we'll begin with an opening statement from yourself. After the questions are asked, if there's time, we'll open it up for additional questions, and then we'll have a closing statement from you. And you'll have, as I said, 3 minutes, and we have a new timekeeper for this. Steve has graciously volunteered, and when you're getting close to the end of your time, he'll raise the 30-second card.
Good.
Any questions from anyone? Okay. Then let's begin. First question, what is the most applicable experience you have had that qualifies you to be an EID board member?
Well, I guess I can start by introducing myself and it'll probably cover that,
Oh,
but.
I'm so sorry,
yeah.
back up. In my enthusiasm, let's begin with your opening statement. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Well, I'm Chuck Mansfield and I'm running for the Division 3 EID board seat to replace Brian Bierkamp as he moves on to the supervisor role. I was born and raised here in Placerville, attended local schools, graduated from El Dorado High School, and went and graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. After working a career in agriculture throughout the state, my wife and I decided to move back to Placerville to start a family and raise our family closer to the grandparents. It was a life goal to work alongside my dad, and I wanted to stand beside him as he began to suffer with the later stages of Parkinson's. So now that he's passed, I run the family business, Goldbud Farms. We manage about 250 acres of diversified crops across the county. We employ 20 to 25 local residents. So I'm a residential and an agricultural ratepayer here in Division 3. I have deep understanding of how important safe and reliable water is to our households, our local businesses, and our place in the economic landscape as a whole. Beyond the private sector work, I'm a member of the County Agricultural Commission. I serve as vice president of both the El Dorado Wine Grape Growers Association and the Placerville Fruit Growers Association. I'm contributor to EID's IMS advisory group. And I'm also an observer of the El Dorado Water Agency's updates to their resource management plan, which is currently underway. I know Director Dwyer is a leader on that front. So, you know, in the private sector, I have a really strong business reputation. I love my job. I love my community. I love our agricultural sector. But I also try to find time to work in the public front and be an advocate for not just our agricultural agenda, but the open space, the recreational needs that the voters of Division III value so much. On top of that, I'm passionate about coaching youth sports. So I coach soccer, basketball, and baseball here locally. I have the support of members of the Board of Supervisors, Senator Gaines, U.S. Congressman. So if elected, I'll be in the unique position to be able to leverage that private and public experience to get the best outcomes for our constituents in Division III.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll go on to the questions. First question, what is the most applicable experience you have had that qualifies you to be an EID board member?
I think, you know, working on the IMS advisory panel, which it's a group of residents. It doesn't owe its existence to any formal board policy with EID, but if you go all the way back to the beginning history of EID, a lot of the water rights were attained by individual farmers and miners collectivizing their water rights into the entity that ultimately became EID. And through that process, those stakeholders that contributed an outside amount were always offered extra input. And over the decades, that evolved into what's called the IMS advisory panel. When critical issues seem to pop up, be it on the finance side, be it on the infrastructure side, the history is that the board usually calls in the IMS advisory group to take a deep dive into whatever that critical issue is. So most recently, we contributed to the last round of the cost of service study, where there were some points where the structured math was just creating some unsustainable outcomes. So that work over the last 3 or 4 years has really showed me how the finances and the money actually flows in and out of EID.
Thank you. In December 2023, the EID Board of Directors approved a rate schedule which authorizes water rate increases of approximately 12% per year for 5 years. Did you agree with the rate increase decision? And what are your ideas for raising revenue and or reducing costs?
Yeah, you know, there's a difference between liking something and supporting something. You know, I can see Director Dwyer likes that comment because there's a reality to the finances at EID. You know, if you look at the numbers, even a 9% rate increase as opposed to the 12 that's scheduled was not going to put the district in a long-term position to be able to cover the debt service and retain enough cash on hand to keep its bond rating high enough to suppress interest rates. So, you know, we all want to avoid rate increases. My opponent is running on a hard promise and basis of his candidacy of no rate increases. But the reality is, if we don't adopt at least these first 2 rate increases, the bond rating will suffer, the debt service won't be met, interest rates will rise, and that's what we call a spiral. And we absolutely need to arrest that financial descent, stabilize it, and then we can look to the future to drive non-rate revenue. Maybe we can find items in the CIP that can be pared back. It's a 2-front approach: limit expenses, increase income, And hopefully we can put ourselves in a position to maybe not adopt those last 2 or hopefully 3 rate increases that are scheduled. That's where the real negative effect will be, that compounding effect of annual 12% rate increases all of a sudden looks like an 80 or 90% rate increase. So if we can not adopt those last couple rate increases, I think that would be the best outcome for the constituents division.
Thank you. Feedback from residents stated it was confusing and difficult to object to a rate increase. How would you make this process easier? Would you vote to include a ballot with all future rate increase proposals?
I probably wouldn't support putting rate increases, that decision solely on the constituents. I think that power needs to remain with the board. What I would say is that part of the role of an EID director is working public workshops, putting out a newsletter, meeting with trade associations, meeting with the public, educating them on why these infrastructure projects are important, how they're being financed, and what we're structurally doing to minimize the ratepayers having to shoulder 100% of those costs. EID is in the unique position to have multiple business lines. It receives income from many other streams other than just spinning water through the meters. So the board can drive those other business lines, show the public how we're bringing in money from places other than their wallets, and show them how we're spending that money to minimize the impacts of these said rate increases.
So just to make sure for clarity, the
Yeah.
question was, would you vote to include a ballot with all future rate increase proposals? And your answer?
Is no,
Okay.
I would stick with the current process. Prop 218 governs a lot of that process, and I believe we need to continue in that manner.
Thank you. EID was founded as an agricultural irrigation district. However, as the west slope of the county developed, EID now serves thousands of suburban, residential, and commercial customers, which has occasionally created conflicts. Would you vote to continue to offer reduced rates to ag? How should EID balance the needs of suburban and agricultural customers?
Yes, I strongly support the AMI, the agricultural immediate irrigation rate. You're correct that EID still is an irrigation district. Irrigation use is probably 15% or less of the total distributions currently. So yeah, we are a majority commercial and residential district at this point. Agriculture does not need the treated water. The history of agriculture is that it received raw ditch water. That level of treatment is sufficient for agriculture's needs. Therefore, they're insulated from some of the treatment costs. That's why there's a difference in the ag rate versus the residential rate. But I'm also certain that we're in the unique position that EID has plenty of water to serve both needs. In a typical year, EID can expect over 70,000 acre feet water in storage. Total demand on the system seems to run between 35 and 40,000 acre feet. As I said, only 15% of that is agriculture, so we typically have a large surplus of water. The costs of water are being driven by debt service, infrastructure needs, rising treatment costs, inflationary pressures on labor and materials. It's not truthful to say that the discount in agriculture creates a rise in the residential rate. They're not directly related to that nature. Yeah.
Okay. Given the recent sewer and water line failures, what are your ideas on how to fix the aging infrastructure problem?
It's going through the CIP line item by line item. They're prioritized by 1, 2, and 3. Priority 1 items in the capital improvement plan relate directly to health and safety. They're regulatory in nature. They're currently under construction, or they're mission critical to delivering water or removing sewage and wastewater. So we need to do a deep dive, especially on the more expensive items in that CIP, make sure they're competitively bidded on. and that the items in there are mission critical to the function of our system. The safety and reliability of our system is mission number one.
Concerns have been raised about the financing costs when EID goes out to refinance its or issue bonds. Would you vote to make it clearer what those costs are, i.e. commission rate for board financing / refinancing?
I think we, it kind of ties into the previous answer. I think board workshops, newsletters, yeah, disclosure, transparency, that's what everybody wants in government. And as far as the financing costs go, yeah, I want to be as transparent with the public as possible. You know, debt, a lot of times debt is a sign of a failing system. But we have some really serious projects. You can look at the Silver Lake Dam, you can look at the El Dorado Hills water treatment plant. They need expansion, they need replacement, and unfortunately, bond debt is going to be a part of that. But yes, we need to separate off the financing costs. We need to disclose those to the public. They need to understand where the debt service sits and how these rate increases are directly related to meeting those debt obligations.
Thank you. As part of the county planning process, EID is responsible for determining whether water is available for proposed development projects in its service territory. Should developers reimburse EID, i.e. ratepayers, for EID expansion costs to extend infrastructure to new developments, what would you propose to increase transparency to the public on expansion project costs for new development?
Yes, developers absolutely need to shoulder the majority, and in some cases, the entirety of infrastructure changes and additions that are put solely to meet their development projects. I think more public workshops, more explanation of how EID arrives at its FCCs. The FCCs are determined partly with future anticipated costs rolled into the out-the-door cost. So developers that pay those FCCs in some form are paying a past buy into the system as it exists today and investing in the future of the system. But as far as direct expansions of main transmission lines, laterals to get to any approved development projects, yeah, the developers need to shoulder the vast majority of those costs. Agriculture does the same thing. If we're going to develop a new orchard, but you have to run a mile-long pipeline to the service lateral, the new orchard district vineyard just pays that cost. So it's rooted in history. And I think it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. During the summer months, EID often sells water to buyers in other parts of California while asking EDC residents to ration their use. How should these conflicts be managed? Could rebates be provided to residents based on reduced usage?
I am not sure that EID makes users ration their use. They have a tiered rate system. So if you want to use less water and as a residential user and stay in rate 1, tier 1, if you want to have a larger lawn, more landscaping, you're going to move into tier 2 as your water usage billing cycle increases. And there's even a tier 3. So I'm not aware of any curtailment letters that are coming directly from EID. So I don't think that part of it is particularly true. But when you talk about water transfers to other districts, as I discussed earlier, EID is in the unique position to have a large inventory of water each year. We can expect a surplus. With any business, if you have an inventory, you need to monetize it. And if demand isn't using up EID's entire inventory, then bulk transfers to other districts that are in need of water are a lucrative maneuver for the district to drive non-rate revenue. The board then has discretion of where to apply that non-rate revenue to hopefully offset some of these proposed rate increases. So I am supportive of bulk transfers to other districts. I I'm also exploring other mechanisms. Traditionally, we've sold water to Westlands Water District. They're a usual customer. But there's emerging opportunities. Roseville Water District might be an example where we can have a dual use of water rights. Sometimes EID's diversion rights don't fall in an advantageous calendar period where there's not demand at that moment to use the water that EID has the rights to divert, but there may be demand in other districts. So the state is beginning to allow dual use on water rights where maybe we could bank in Folsom some of our water that we don't have demand for in that moment, pump it into ground storage for Roseville to meet their demand at that moment. And later in the year, we can use Roseville's diversion rights when EID does have demand. These are opportunities to bring the demand and supply back into balance so that we are constantly monetizing every drip of water that EID has access to.
Thank you. In addition to revenue received from its ratepayers, EID receives non-rate revenues from property taxes, hydroelectric generation sales, recreation fees, and other sources. The use of these fees is less restrictive than rate revenues. How would you prioritize spending non-rate revenue?
I think non-rate revenue, debt service, reducing the bond debt, anytime the district has windfalls, I think we need to look at reducing debt first. Debt comes with risk. We can expect interest rates to continue to move north. So that's the first spot I would look. Secondly, critical infrastructure needs offset the costs that ratepayers are shouldering for these critical infrastructure projects. I think that's a close 1-2 for me.
Thank you. What is your position on water hookup fees? Should they be the same regardless of the square footage of the home? Would you vote to reduce hookup fees further for ADUs?
So part one of that question, it becomes overly complex for the district to try to have some sort of a square footage tiered FCC cost. The other problem is EID can't be in the position to police, future expansions of that house. You may have an elderly retired couple that moves into a 1,200 square foot house, but once they sell that property to the next person, are they going to expand that house and put in a huge yard and the demand rises? And now that connection didn't fairly buy into the past investment or the future investments of the district. So at present, I'm probably not supportive of tiering that out based on square footage, but I'm always open to proposals and would take a look at that if there was a really compelling argument and structure presented to me as a director. I would take a look at it, but it would have to be pretty compelling.
And the second part was, would you vote to reduce hookup fees further for ADUs?
That's an intriguing one. I think the ADU addition, there's probably some room there to renegotiate those. If it reduces the need for additional single family dwellings in the county, if it alleviates some of that demand and pressure for housing, there's probably some merit to that, but I would need to really take a deep dive into the actual proposal, which I haven't been presented with in any of the public documentation yet.
Okay. What do you see as the two key issues facing EID in the next 4 years?
I think turnover at the executive level, I think we can anticipate multiple retirements in the general manager's office and at the head of department level. That's one of my greatest interests in serving this next 4 years, would be participating in the process to make sure we have the right people in the right jobs that are going to be in it for the long haul to serve the public benefit. So that's critical issue number one. Number two would be finding ways to reduce the reliance on bond debt and mitigating the increasing required debt service.
Okay. So those are all the questions that I have. And so we do have time. And so I'm gonna now open it up to the folks in the room first, and then we'll go on Zoom. Chris?
As I told you before we started. I did go to college, but I don't know what I told you, I went to UC Davis. I got a degree in environmental engineering which included water resources, water treatment. So in those days, we talked about primary, secondary, and tertiary. In your overview of what you know about El Dorado Irrigation District, how much of those primary, secondary, tertiary do we have? And as you probably realize, tertiary is more expensive than secondary. Can you speak a little bit about water quality and how this EID organization functions in the area of water quality?
Yeah, well, EID is an incredibly complex water district. We have 5 treatment facilities. We have 220 square miles of service area, over 1,000 miles of pipe. There's 36, I think, different storage tanks. This is just on the water side. This isn't taking into account wastewater, sewage. There's 38 pump stations, and we have over 40,000 different services, commercial, agriculture, residential. So there's incredible complexity. We have terrain, which in some cases is a blessing. In other cases, it's a curse because it leads to expensive pumping requirements. But yeah, running those 5 treatment facilities, I've toured 2 of them, which are both tertiary. Incredibly expensive, but we have the highest quality water, I think, in the state. Our water tests show that. And I actually know a few water truck operators that make money filling their trucks here in county, and they head down to the valley to fill swimming pools because the water's so high quality. But it's very expensive. And that's where these cost of service studies are so important every 5 years to make sure that we're sharpening the pencil and any shortfalls there are allocated for and not being backfilled with bond debt.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna go around the room. This way we have enough time to get around the room. Kevin?
So thank you, Chuck.
Yeah.
I wanted to first say, Laurel chimed in and noted that you're endorsed by the El Dorado County Chamber of Commerce tax, so I wanted to at least convey that.
Thanks.
And you mentioned the rate increases and jeopardizing the bond rating. Obviously, nobody wants to pay more for anything. But can you illustrate if our bond rating was affected, what are can you illustrate just the consequences of if we went down that path and put ourselves in that compromised position? What would that look like to the ratepayer?
Well, the first outcome would be higher interest rates. So the debt service requirement that's currently forecast, all the assumptions in the publicly facing documentation is based on assumptions that these rate increases will be adopted. So if we come in today and vote for no rate increases, no rate hikes, the immediate outcome is the next time that S&P comes to review EID's financials and we don't have those rate increases, I would assume EID's cash on hand would become critically low. The days operating cash would be critically low. And that was already one of the points that S&P kind of gave us a C grade on. They passed us, but it was pointed out that that's needs to be improved. So S&P came in and said, okay, you're going to a B rating or worse. Interest rates would immediately rise. So future debt service would increase beyond what is currently forecast. And if we weren't able to make up that shortfall from non-rate revenue, then it's going to put us in a position where we are required to make even steeper rate increases than what are currently forecast. Yeah. I guess I'll make one addition to that. There's certain capital improvement projects that are on the docket that are labeled priority number one because they're regulatory in nature. FERC, other regulatory agencies are requiring EID to, Silver Lake Dam would be an example. A $50 million project that the district has to complete or we lose that water. So it's gonna be funded by bond ratings. We need to work to keep the debt service as inexpensive as possible on projects like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And your depth of knowledge is really impressive. There was one thing you said that I was gonna ask you about when people, about ag rates. You had said that, untreated ditch water, that's not currently the case.
Correct. Yeah, so I was referring to the history of agricultural deliveries were historically ditch
Right.
water.
Right,
EID came to the agricultural community and for two reasons requested that agricultural customers moved to pressurized pipe deliveries of treated water in a shared system with residents. They
Right,
asked
right.
for it for two reasons. At the time, it seemed to pencil out as a cost savings maneuver. So
Uh-huh.
that the district only had to manage and maintain one system, and
Right,
they
right.
did not have to manage and maintain the ditch system.
right,
There's also a certain amount of inaccuracy with ditch water. Because its structure, when it flows onto a property, would flow through a weir where a meter reader would come out and would dip a stick in and
Yes.
take a measurement, and they
Right.
would make a calculation and
Right.
estimate the water use, and that's how the agricultural user was built.
Yep.
So,
no, I understand that,
Yeah.
it was a little,
Yeah.
it seemed a little, misleading, but I understand what you're saying. The other part of my question is, what about the people who take advantage of ag rate by, like, planting 14 olive trees on their property in Greenstone Country? And then get the ag rate, I mean, that was years ago, I don't know
Yeah.
if anyone's cracked down on that, but that seems like a really abusive, use of the system.
I agree with you 100%. As a director, I will always move to fully fund EID's enforcement of inspections of small farm rates to ensure that they have a minimum of five acres planted. That's when it's 5 acres or more, it's EID's responsibility to police that acreage is in the ground and being farmed in a farmer-like manner. That's the quote in the regulations. The small farm user is smaller than 5 acres, 2.5 is the minimum. So between 2.5 and 5, the policing of that falls on the county ag department. I also serve on the county agricultural commission where I oversee Leanne Mila, the county agricultural commissioner. So in that capacity, I will absolutely make sure that her staff is policing and enforcing. Every 3 years, those small farm users need a site inspection where they take a GPS measurement of the planting. There's a minimum spacing between plants that's required, so you can't just put 4 olive trees on each corner of your property and say that's 2.5 acres. It has to be a cohesive planting. I support the strong policing of that to minimize abuse. You need to be a commercial farmer to be entitled to agricultural water rates.
Thank you. Jim?
On an engineering side, not the cost side. But could you describe how the water gets from Folsom, addressing the water that we are able to sell to other water districts?
Yeah.
How does it get out of Folsom? I'm assuming that it all comes out of Folsom. And is that a bidding process for the district downstream that gets the water, or how is that water priced?
The pricing of that water is, well, let's step back to the first part of your question. Generally, the water flows from our reservoirs. We typically would spin it through the powerhouse. It would be returned into the South Fork, flow naturally into Folsom. We can bank water in Folsom for 30 days. 30 days. That water can then be pumped and be spun through the residential meters in El Dorado Hills. But if there's not enough demand, that water sits in Folsom Lake too long, it becomes federal water and EID loses all rights to it. So from time to time, it makes abundant sense to, yes, negotiate with outside districts and use the Central Valley and federal water projects to convey that water, transfer it to other districts, and then receive a cash check payment for that water. So the rates are regulated in some nature. The price for that water can ebb and flow based on economic conditions, drought conditions. The state's pretty heavily involved in setting parameters there. But yeah, at the end of the day, general manager staff typically negotiates those contracts, brings those contracts to the EID directors for approval and ratification. The final layer is then the state ultimately has to approve whether that transfer is going to take place or not. And a lot of times that determination is based on the capacity within California's water project. So this year we had a deal on the table. Westland's Water District wanted to buy the water from EID. EID had the water in the right place at the right time. And the state stepped in and said, well, we don't have capacity in our system, so we cannot consummate this transaction. Yeah. Yet they're curtailing other water districts and saying that there's only 50% availability. So tell me how that adds up, if they only have half the water in the system, but.
Thank you. Okay,
Yeah. Is there any plans for well users to be brought into the regular water use?
I think in the division that I'm running to represent, there's no additional annexations that I've been made aware of that are on the docket. If you're a well user and you're already in EID's service area, you would have the option to explore unilaterally for your parcel what the cost of connection would be. So if that property is already in the service area, it's an option for the landowner.
Is it reasonable?
No, that's kind of in the eye of the beholder. The FCC costs are substantial. But the replacement value of EID's water system is over $1 billion. It's probably $1.2 billion. And so some of these FCC costs people need to realize is you're buying into that sunk cost that existing users have been shouldering month to month for decades. There's some families that have water connections that date back 100 years. So they've been slowly, incrementally adding to the system's cost. And new users need to buy into that as well as these future capital expenses that are on the docket.
thank you. Sure.
Thank you for being here this morning.
Thanks.
Can you possibly give me the thought process, that you're a candidate, as to why EID is selling water across county line into subdivisions in Boston?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. The rationale, so EID annexed, it's around 100 acres across the county line in Sacramento County, in the Folsom area. It's being developed now. It's not the big Folsom Ranch up over the hill adjacent to Bidwell. It's not that project. That's a common misconception. EID is not servicing Folsom Ranch. The development that faces El Dorado Hills with the eastern exposure right by the El Dorado Hills rock signs, that area is already annexed into EID's service area and has been for some time. The rationale is that a local single county water purveyor, the state has twice in the past sequestered all the property tax revenue from those districts. They have never sequestered costs from a multi-county agency. So EID annexing this 100 acres and serving this, I want to say it's in the 300s, but I know it's fewer than 500 connections. This will serve to protect EID's share of the property tax revenues, which is a form of non-rate revenue that the board has discretion on how to offset ratepayer expenses. So that can be somewhere around $20 million a year. So it's very, very substantial. That with the water transfers are the two main forms of non-rate revenue. So servicing that small footprint really does protect quite a bit of non-rate revenue for the district.
Thank you. Next question, anyone else in the back row? Okay, go ahead.
What's your position on selling the Texas Hill Reservoir property given to EID by the taxpayers and down, doing away with the dam idea and changing it to housing? What's your position?
Which project? I didn't
Texas
catch.
Hill.
Texas Hill.
So the Texas Hill project, I think is it's a reservoir concept whose time kind of came and went. Had the SOFAR project in the eighties been completed, it would have made a lot more sense. But they're to construct that project, I'm not sure the bang for the buck is there. If we're gonna add additional reservoirs in the future, I think the more compelling project would be the Alder Springs reservoir. It would require little to no eminent domain or condemnation of existing structures or residences. It's much higher in the Sierras, so you have the snowpack benefits. It's a deep, narrow canyon, all granite. So the single dam, it would be a relatively simple project. It's above where the fish live, so it mitigates some of the environmental concerns. You'll get sued and there'll be a long court battle. But it has a much better chance of, I think, succeeding in the long term, and the water yield seems to be a lot higher. So currently, EID has a lot of water storage to meet current demand. But as a board, yeah, you do need to maintain a vision 50, 100 years out. If we were going to add additional storage, I think the Alder Creek project is the much more compelling project to pursue. And yeah, I think Texas Hill has kind of come and gone, and I think that surplus should probably be sold back and put it back into the private sector.
Thank you. Sue?
So I had three short ones. The bond rating, is that, when you talk about the interest rates, is that for new bonds or are they constant on the existing bonds? Does that change?
New bonds,
Yeah, I mean, when you're
Mostly,
saying
yeah.
the interest rates will go up, is it on the new bonds
Yes.
or old bonds?
yeah, new bonds, yeah.
Okay. And then, so when they raise the rates, if you look at the farm, they go by the meters where and if you have a farm, they bill you by size of meter, whether you use the water or not. Do you think that's right? Cause that's what concerns me about these small farms, you know, they put in big meters to do flood, but shouldn't they be charged by usage rather than the size of their meter?
The district takes an approach, we try to meet expenses on both the running monthly usage, but also the standby fees that you're referring to. If you didn't charge the monthly standby fees, which are, you're correct, they're tiered based on the size of the meter. If we didn't charge that, a fallow field would be paying nothing month to month. And
I didn't know that they never charged on meters, cause our farm, it was $60 a month where it just got there
yeah,
for decades.
correct. And so there's, you have a connection, you're part of the district, and so you need to be paying something monthly for these ongoing costs. EID has bills every month, and every user needs to pay their fair share of it.
Okay, but the larger meters are like.
Yeah, I have a 6-inch, I have
$300.
Well, I have a 6-inch meter in Apple Hill at our Camino Alto vineyard that the standby fee, I believe, is $680 per month, I want to say. I could be off a little bit there. So yeah, it's a significant cost. But you could take, as an example, the Camino lumber mill had 9 agricultural meters that ranged from 4 inches to 8 inches, right? All those services. They sold those back to the district, but had they not, the EID has to factor in that potential use, right? We can't monetize that potential use or apply it elsewhere because we have to keep it at the ready for a service of that nature. So they need to be paying a monthly fee to help offset the costs for other ratepayers.
Thank you, they're
Yeah.
not gonna let me ask it, so.
I'll come back to
I'm
you.
happy to take one additional one, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, questions here? So we'll be next, go ahead. You have a question?
I have a question. In proportion to other water districts, the EID have more or less debt?
That's a wonderful question. I think we're probably somewhere in the middle. I haven't done a deep dive as far as the debt service obligations or the total outstanding debt of our surrounding districts. But my feel is that we probably carry a little more debt than I would guess at least half of our surrounding districts, but we're not at the very top. I would guess we're probably somewhere in the 60th, 70th percentile. Part of that is we're a very old water district. We have infrastructure that still dates back to World War I. Now a lot of it's in great condition. You know, stuff back then was really high quality. You touch that steel and it is serious Pittsburgh steel from back in the day. But there's a lot of infrastructure that was put in the 60s and 70s and 80s with cheaper materials, cheaper post-war materials that are just not holding up. So we're partly starting to pay for past sins, and that's what's driving some of our debt levels.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
I'm fairly new to this district and I'm from Sonoma and Mendocino County, but it's just been so educational. And just all of the questions that people have asked, put out there, it's just really great to see.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any other questions here? If not, I'm gonna move on.
I have a question.
Steve, you have a question?
Yes, I do. One of the things I find about the EID is you don't do a good job with your advertising. And particularly, I get people calling me up saying, my bill is $400 a month, and then you tell them, well, it's 2 months, and you gotta explain it to them, there's sewage and there, you know, all that goes with it. I would suggest, and maybe have somebody carry this, where you create yourself a small logo, such as a duck or a beaver or whatever that talks in animated ways.
Mascot.
And exactly, and creates little 1 and 2 minute series that goes on to Nextdoor and various other things where you can explain.
Will you tell me, do you want to be the duck or the beaver?
The goose.
The goose, right.
Who laid the golden egg, right?
Anyway, my point is that you could put out little videos on Nextdoor, on Facebook, whatever, where people would start to understand the cost of building this amazing system. You know, most of the, I live in El Dorado Hills.
Yeah.
Most of the people down there that I know have never been anywhere going east of here except on Highway 50.
Yeah.
So they don't have any idea what these canyons are about. They hear about the fires, but they're never seeing them. My point is, if you're gonna get them to understand why they're paying this kind of money for it, it might be a lot easier if they're seeing something about once every 2 weeks or so, just explaining one more 2 minute slot. What do you think of that idea?
I think the board, part of our role is being public facing, doing meetings like this, facing public scrutiny, answering these questions that are sometimes difficult. I would say I know General Manager Abercrombie has made a significant effort through the waterfront newsletter, pieces in the Mountain Democrat, explaining his vision on why this aggressive CIP plan is so necessary. They have made efforts that seem to be a little bit fledgling on the social media front. So perhaps that's one place that the board could look to, whether it requires funding or finding the right person within the district that can really put a good educational front on social media. But yeah, it's public outreach, it's workshops, it's every avenue possible to meet with the public. You know, this is a room of high information voters, highly intelligent voters that want to drill down and get granular on.
Don't forget Chris is here.
Yeah. Yeah, except for one Duchess. But you know, you guys really want to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And we need board members that can put those in lay terms and make analogies that hit and resonate with the public so that they understand where we're at.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for folks online? Any hands raised?
At the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay, well, then it's now your opportunity for your 3-minute closing statement.
Well, I guess, you know, I just want to thank the Taxpayers Association, for the opportunity. I had really looked forward to Brad attending because, you know, he's running a campaign on a central basis and a central promise of no rate increases. And for me, if that's what you're running on, if there's one place you're gonna go to lay out your financial plan and articulate how you want to make good on that promise, if there's one stop you make, it's this room, it's this group, it's this organization, it's these members, high information members that want to understand the finances behind the scene. And I think that absence should speak volumes and show that there really is no plan behind that catchphrase, and there's no plans to keep that promise. You know, if you can't make time, EID board meetings are every other Monday. And so with weeks' notice, if you can't make time to be here on a Monday, how can we trust that you're going to be at the board meetings every other Monday? I have dedicated a lot of mind share and extra time into understanding these positions. My interest started when my water bill went up, just like every other ratepayer. Mitigating those increases is more complex than people realize, but I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and get in there to start making progress with the current board members. We don't need partisanship. We shouldn't allow either of our political parties to pick an insurgent candidate with an insurgent message, pay for all their signage, pay for all their mailers, and then hide them from public scrutiny. I think if we let either party get away with that, it minimizes the teeth and the importance behind groups like this, behind trade associations. I think that the work you guys do is incredibly important, and I hope you all will support me, most importantly with your vote. But I need word of mouth. Anybody willing to post a sign, tell your friends, your family, other voters, your neighbors, what you heard today, and your perspectives on this race would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, just one more thank you for the opportunity to be here.
So I have to follow up to this conclusion. What were you gonna say before? But I just want to make sure I get an opportunity to comment. What did you want to say?
Well, then let me just
Yeah.
end my remarks. Okay, so first I want to thank everyone for being here today, making the time, and for the folks that made the time on Zoom, and especially you, Chuck, for being here today. We really appreciate your candor and willingness to answer tough questions. I hope, I know I found it informative. Hope everyone else found it informative here. We will be posting both candidate forums, EID 1 and 3, on our website now that we have completed this forum. We will be having our next forum on the 21st with the El Dorado Hills Water Board Fire District. Hope you will join us for that. And again, I just want to say thank you for being here today. So then I'll turn it over to you.
So to conclude the candidates forum for El Dorado Irrigation District, we did have earlier Division 1 and so Paul Penn and Noel Russell. Also very informative, and yes, we did miss that back and forth that comes from having at least 2 people. But I did want to say that when I talked to Mr. Polkjoy, he did tell me this is the time of the year where he's using his trucks the most.
Well, I don't.
Hold on a second. I just want to capture the fact that it was a tentative approval of which we set up for.
Right.
And that's important because I want him to at least be respected in that regard, that he had a conversation with me. I knew this in advance and I conveyed it to you.
Right.
That's just a disclaimer. I wanted him to know that that was the case. And I loved the fact that we had these series of questions, which then makes us more more knowledgeable about what it's all about.
Yeah.
And you did a great job in expressing that, and I wanted to thank you
Thank you.
for coming.
Chris,
Thank you,
That's my.
Well, I'm a farmer and it's October and I'm here, so.
Yeah.
It's not like you weren't busy.
Yeah.
So this concludes our forum for the EID
Yep.
candidates. I'd like to just inform the group that 3 of the candidates, Paul, Ken, and Noel,
No,
and Chuck, have been coming to the EID board members, board meetings consistently and learning about some of the issues that we face. And I think that's very commendable, and I think that's important to know that those candidates have taken not only the time to come to this forum,
Yes,
but the time to go to board meetings for the past several months, learning about the issues and meeting with the executive director. So I think that's important.
thank
thank
you for
you.
that.
Good
comment.
comment.
I do have one more report. This concludes this part of our meeting. That I didn't put on the agenda, that El Dorado Irrigation, El Dorado County Board of Supervisors is meeting tomorrow. They will be at South Lake Tahoe. If you don't know where the chamber is, South Lake Tahoe is at the airport. And it's the city council for South Lake Tahoe. They'll be using their facilities to have a meeting. They're gonna have a tour in the afternoon, so at the open forum portion is at 12:30. 12:30, not 1 o'clock. Because they wanna be able to leave from there and go out on the tour. The tour is gonna be all around the west side of the basin. Starting with, I believe, Myers, and it will go all the way up to Viking Home. And that area up on the west side. And that will be attended by whoever is driving. Their vehicles will probably follow and meet because there's a calendar that's in the agenda. The other part of it is, as our leader here for the candidates forum, Gina, knows, SEED, which is the new Economic Development Committee, is, there's an appointments to, I believe, 7 positions on the consent calendar for tomorrow. So take a look at that, see who's being appointed. Did you have any further comment on SEED that you wanted to let everybody know before we conclude?
No,
No,
I think it's pretty straightforward.
she did an excellent job in helping to produce the original, the document that they're operating under.
Yes,
What is it called, bylaws?
the bylaws.
Bylaws. So anyway, all of that is playing out now. The board's made a decision and the people are gonna be appointed. The other thing is gonna be a Myers report on their area plan. They have a Myers area plan report. That's gonna be discussed, as well as a few other topics like the transit system that goes around the lake is gonna be discussed. So that's a summary of tomorrow Board of Supervisors meeting. I think Brian DeBerry would want me to also comment that there is fleet management purchases on consent tomorrow. I believe SUVs, as many as, I believe, 10.
Yeah,
So I did see that and I wanted to respect that he always brings that up when I don't talk about it.
that's another $400,000.
What was that?
I said it's probably another $400,000 to $500,000 after just buying more in the last year and a half.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to make a comment on C. The appointees, they'll be appointed by the board, they were appointed by the board. The majority of the people that are appointed are not business owners. So if any of you who are business owners and want input into that, that is the time to respond before the board approves them. Since it's an economic development commission, it's important that we have representatives from the business of El Dorado County. So I just wanted to inform you that that is what is happening.
At 9 o'clock, the meeting will, commence, and it is a Zoom meeting, so if you don't have it, if you can't go up there, at least Zoom at, 9 o'clock, tomorrow. That concludes my report on, did you have anything additional?
It is 8:30 on the dot.
Again, okay.
I move to adjourn.
Adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.